Thing 1, 2, 3. After you have spoken, click on the stop button. The purpose of the informative speech is to provide interesting, useful, and unique information to your audience. By dedicating yourself to the goals of providing information and appealing to your audience, you can take a positive step towards succeeding in your efforts as an informative speaker. Nature offers no greater splendor than the starry sky on a clear dark night, silent and jeweled with the constellations of ancient myth and legend. The night sky has inspired wonder throughout the ages, a wonder that leads our imagination far from the confines of earth and the pace of the present day and out into the distant reaches of space and cosmic time itself. Every morning, no matter how late he had been up, my father rose at 5:30, went to his study, wrote up for a couple of hours, made us all breakfast, read the paper with my mother, and then went back to work for the rest of the morning. Many years passed before I realized that he did this for a living. There is every reason to believe that effective regulations are not merely a luxury that only the rich can afford, but an important foundation for a thriving private sector and economic growth. But the broad pattern of the past 5 years has been that the main reform efforts are taking place in rich countries. There is every reason to believe that effective regulations are not merely a luxury that only the rich can afford, but an important foundation for a thriving private sector and economic growth. But the broad pattern of the past 5 years has been that the main reform efforts are taking place in rich countries. Business school admissions officers said the new drive to attract younger students was in part the result of a realization that they had inadvertently limited their applicant pool by requiring several years' work experience. Talented students who might otherwise have gone to business school instead opted for a law or policy degree because they were intimidated by the expectation of work experience. Business school admissions officers said the new drive to attract younger students was in part the result of a realization that they had inadvertently limited their applicant pool by requiring several years' work experience. Talented students who might otherwise have gone to business school instead opted for a law or policy degree because they were intimidated by the expectation of work experience. The most obvious change is that 46% of the college undergrads are now women. When I went there, it was only the third year that women had been admitted, and about 70% of students were male. The most obvious change is that 46% of the college undergraduates are now women. The most obvious change is that 46% of the college undergraduates are now women. When I went there, it was only the third that women had been admitted, and about 70% of students were male.
Please pass these handouts along to the rest of the people in your row.
Please hand out this pass to the all rest of the people in your row.
The first step was to establish a baseline of known distance.
The first step was to establish the baseline in known distance.
Politicians make much better decisions when they listen to public opinion.
Politicians make much better decisions when they listen to public opinion.
Please take these up to Mr. Mitchell in the chemistry lab.
Please take this opstum and matchstick to the chemistry lab.
The bus right out in front will take you to the station.
The bus right in front will take you to this station.
The head of department isn't available till Thursday.
The head of the department isn't available till Thursday.
– 39.5% of California residents do not speak English in the home.
39.5% residents of California doesn't speak English at the home.
Children are not allowed in tutorial rooms at any time.
Children are not allowed in tutorial room at any time.
There are many people in the USA who are critical of their voting system.
There are many people in the USA who are critical about their voting system.
Many environment experts are very concerned about the future of our planet.
Many biometric experts are worried about the future of our planet. The given line graph is about recent global monthly. The given line graph is about recent global monthly mean CO2 emissions in different years from 2004 to 2009. It also consists of parts per million from 374 to 388. Firstly, the highest recent global monthly COT can be seen in the year 2009, that is around 360, followed by the year 2008. However, the lowest COT can be seen in the year 2004 at around 376. In conclusion, it shows about recent global monthly mean CO2. The given line graph is about gender pay gap in Scotland and UK from the year 1997 to 2005. The given line graph is The given line graph is about gender pay gap in the Scotland and UK from the year 1997 to 2005. Firstly, the highest gender pay gap can be seen in the year 1997, that is around 15%, followed by year 1998, which is slightly less at around 15%. Moreover, the lowest gender pay gap can be seen in the year 2005, and it can be seen that by over the years the gender pay gap is increasing in both the countries, Scotland and UK. Comparison of the fundamental needs model. The given image is about comparison of fundamental needs model with Abraham's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Fundamental needs consist of status and esteem needs, stimulation needs, and the security needs, whereas the personality and motivation also includes the psychological needs and safety needs. Firstly, it shows that self-actualization needs consist of creativity and fulfillment. It is on the top of pyramid, followed by self-esteem needs, which consist of respect and recognition, and the base needs is psychological needs that consist of food, water, shelter, and warmth. Person per year in Great Britain. The given bar graph is about journeys per person per year in the Great Britain from the year 1995 to 1997 and in the year 2006. Firstly, it shows that journeys per person was higher for the car, that is more than 600 numbers. It is same for both the years 1995 and 1997 and also for the 2006. That was followed by walk, which is around 300 numbers. However, the lowest number can be seen for the other modes, that is less than 100 numbers. In conclusion, it shows about journeys per person per year in the Great Britain. The given bar graph is about volunteers who incurred expenses. The given bar graph is about volunteers' expenses, and the expenses include meals, training, and travel cost. Firstly, postage has the highest expenses at around 40%, followed by other at 20%. However, uniform has the lowest expenses at around 15%. Moreover, training and travel cost has almost similar expenses at around 20%. In conclusion, the graph shows the volunteers' expenses in different categories.
What has happened in Latin America as a result of globalization? Well, they have had now more than a decade of what is called reform. A decade of globalization. And throughout the continent, people are asking questions like, has reform failed us? Has globalization failed us? Because clearly things have not worked out the way they were told they ought to. Just to give you a picture, they were told that reform would lead to faster economic growth. After a decade, what are the numbers? In fact, recent growth is far slower than it was in the 50s, 60s and 70s before reform. That is not a very inspiring success story. Even in the beginning part of the 90s, growth was still below what it was in the 50s, 60s and 70s, but the growth it got in the beginning of the period was not sustainable, and it was not sustained. Throughout the region, poverty, as measured on the $2 a day standard as a percentage of the population, was actually up.
The given lecture is about the effect of globalization in the Latin America. Firstly, the speaker mentioned after the decade of globalization, people asked how has the reform changed and why it is failed. Secondly, they talked about the things that didn't work out for them as they expected because the economic growth was not that much high, but there was good at the in the past around 50s and 60s. Moreover, they talked about it was not inspiring success story. Additionally, they said that there is no sustainable development and poverty is also increasing among the people. In conclusion, the lecture talked about the globalization effect in Latin America.
The most visible manifestation of this wealth was a series of grand projects that were begun by Napoleon III, mainly in Paris, soon after he came to power in the 1850s. He said, "I want to be a second Augustus," making reference to the Emperor Augustus's claim that he found Rome a city of brick and left it one of marble. In the case of Napoleon III, he found Paris in 1851 a city of cobblestones and twisting medieval streets, and he left it one of asphalt and macadam, because what he began doing was bulldozing old Paris, the ancient medieval part of Paris, and replacing it with wide new boulevards, 85 miles of them, that he lit with some 20,000 gas lamps, which he took out all the old 18th century oil lamps, replaced them with gas, which gave a much cleaner, brighter, regular light. Also 50,000 trees were planted alongside them, many of them the chestnut trees that we now think of as synonymous with Paris. And he drained the streets with 200 miles of sewers, these new famous Parisian sewers beneath the streets, thereby making the city a much more safer, pleasant place to wander, to stroll, to people watch, to have coffee or absinthe in the cafes.
The given lecture is about manifestation of grand projects in the Paris in the year 1950. Firstly, the speaker mentioned about the reference to Augusta claim and the Napoleon found Paris in the year 1951. It was the replacement of ancient medieval priest was replaced with the white gas and the light. The speaker said that Napoleon planted many trees like chestnut. It was planted over the street and the city looks better. He also said that city was safer and pleasant places where people can have coffee in the cafes. In conclusion, the lecture focused on the development of Paris in the year 1851.
Agriculture refers to the production of food and goods through what activity?
Farming, cultivation, farming, cultivation.
What instrument allows you to see distant objects in space?
Telescopes, telescopes.
How many years are there in a century?
100 years, 100 years, 100 years.
What is used to turn off an electric light?
Switch, remote, switch, power board.
How many years are in a decade?
10 years, 10 years.
A group of 3 students are talking about the film version of a book they've been studying. So, what did everyone make of the film then? I absolutely loved her novel, but I've got to admit I was really disappointed by the film adaptation we saw in class. It didn't stay true to the book. The ending was different, it wasn't historically accurate, and the characters didn't really match my idea of who they were, especially the lead.
Well, it's always going to be potentially controversial adapting a book to a film. You're never going to please everyone. I think you've got to take genres like this with an open mind. I can't think of any I've seen that are an exact copy. I thought the book worked on the big screen because it was less about the plot and more about the visuals.
Yeah, it can be hit and miss, can't it? I think it's all about choosing actors and costumes and sets that reflect when the story's set, and the director creating the right mood to bring out the best elements of the book. For me, it ticked all those boxes. I actually thought it was much better than the book.
And sometimes it works better when the scriptwriter goes off on a tangent and has a completely different take on a book, so that it's almost unrecognisable from the book. Like ones that are made into musicals. Then the film takes on, like, a life of its own.
But if it's a story I've already read, I want the adaptation to be recognisable at least. Or what's the point? You might as well do something original. Create something from scratch instead, don't you think?
Personally, I'd say anything goes as long as I think it works. And I intentionally avoid looking too much at reviews before seeing an adaptation, because the rating will be heavily influenced by how much the writer loved the book. I want to make up my own mind and decide for myself if I like the film.
Really? I do the opposite. I decide whether or not an adaptation might be worth watching, or any film for that matter, based on the overall rating from the film critics and members of the public. If it's not at least an 80% good rating, I don't bother. Unless we've been told to watch it because we're reading it in class.
Well, here's an idea. Next time, let's all go and watch a film adaptation first before seeing any reviews, and see if our opinions match the ratings. I think it'll be interesting to see how much we agree with each other.
You're on! Well, there's that Jane Austen period drama about to be released, isn't there? What's it called? Let's go to see that.
The given discussion between three speakers was about film version of the books. The first speaker mentioned that he loves the novel, but he was not satisfied with the film saw in the last class because the characters didn't match the expectation and the main lead character wasn't that much good as she thought. She also said that the creating smoothing from the sketch might be the good idea for creating the new films. Additionally, they also talked about seeing the film adaptation first before watching the movie, and they also need to look for the film reviews. The second speaker pointed out that scene was not copy and it was okay for him. It was more about the visuals, not on the storyline, and perfectly matching with the books that they have read earlier in the class. This speaker also focused on the musicals and the visuals parts of the movie that engaged the audience and helped to interact with them better. Additionally, they talked about the adaptation and worth watching. Also, he said that he look after the 80% of good rating. He doesn't bother after the reviews. The third speaker said that best elements of the books, and also talked about avoiding watching reviews because some audience might not give good reviews even the film is better and has got the good storyline. So she also talked about making up her own mind to like the film. She has her own choice while selecting the which film is good for her. And towards the end, they talked about they are planning to watch Austen drama which is releasing soon. In conclusion, the discussion focused on the film version of books.
Three members of staff are having a meeting about organising a conference in their department.
So, this is our first meeting to try and organise the department's annual conference, and I must say, I'm starting to feel a bit worried. I know I'm a worrier by nature, but there just seems to be so much still to be done, and it's only just over 2 weeks away now, isn't it?
Well, closer to 3 weeks, actually. Anyway, yes, there is quite a lot to do. But I don't think we need to start panicking just yet. The way I see it, the key thing is to be organized. So the first thing is to make a list and, Prioritize. We've already booked the 2 lecture halls and recreation area, so that's a start.
Yes, so I guess the next thing is we need to work out the order of events and arrange who will give talks and lead the discussions. I've already talked to most of the possible speakers, and I'll confirm things with them. Then we can get going on writing the publicity material and getting it printed.
Thanks. That's already sounding more manageable. I wouldn't mind writing the publicity stuff. I think some posters and small leaflets will be enough, don't you? I know it's open to the public, but I imagine most participants will be from the department. So I reckon it'll be okay to do something on a laptop and just print it off ourselves. We don't need anything too flashy, do we?
No, probably not. But it'd be good to attract some people from outside, or at least from the rest of the college. On that subject, can I make a suggestion? How about getting in a main speaker, someone a bit more well-known in academic circles?
I'm not sure. I mean, I can see how that might attract more people, but the focus of the whole conference is the work of our department. Don't you think having a kind of star guest might draw attention away from that? And also maybe intimidate some of the other speakers who aren't so used to speaking in public?
Actually, I think it's a good idea. In fact, I can think of someone who could do it. She's written a couple of books that were well received, and she's a brilliant speaker, clever and funny. I used to work with her at another college, so I know her a bit. I could contact her if you like.
Well, okay. As long as it's a topic that falls within the general area, but doesn't clash directly with what others are discussing, it could certainly raise our profile and bring in more people. And there's no harm in asking, is there?
Okay, so I'll contact her tomorrow and see if she's free. Meanwhile, Jen, can you talk to the other speakers and discussion leaders and make a list of times and topics? If you can let me know that, I'll make a start on writing the leaflet. And we'd better schedule the next meeting, maybe for the beginning of next week.
The given discussion between 3 speakers is about organizing the conference in the department. The first speaker mentioned that he feels a little bit worried because there is so much need to be done and there is only 2 weeks left to happen the conferences. He talked about the posters will help and posters can be printed from the laptop as there will be staff only attending the seminars. Also, this speaker talked about he will bring one brilliant speaker who is clever and smart. She can help to attract the many guests and he is planning to contact her tomorrow. And he also said that he will be writing the leaflet from now onwards. The second speaker said that actually the conference will happen in 3 weeks so that they can have the enough time. So she is not much worried because she thinks that 3 weeks should be sufficient and the key thing is to be organized and make list of the tasks they need to prioritize. She talks about attracting outside people from the college and there should be the main speaker who is good in the academic curriculum things. She also talked about raising our profile and bringing more people in the conferences. The third speakers agreed with the second and said that they need to find the who can lead the discussion and she will be writing the publicity matters on the posters. She talked about star guest may take attention from all the guests and the weak speaker may not get more recognition. Towards the end, they focus on bringing the good speaker to attract the more audience in their conferences. In conclusion, the discussion focused on organizing conferences in the department.
You have a part-time job at the university library. Your manager has asked you to work overtime on Saturday, but you'll miss the last bus home. Your friend has a car and might be able to help. What would you say to them?
Hello friends, I hope you can help me on this situation. Firstly, I would like to inform you that I have a part-time job at the university library, but my manager has asked me to work overtime on Saturday, but I will miss the bus last home. in this situation, if you give me a ride on your car, that will be really helpful, because I need to attend the library job as well, and also need to do overtime on Saturday. So this is an exception situation, and if I able to work in both the places, that will be really good, and manager will be happy on this situation. I really hope that you will help me on this situation. I'm looking for your reply. Thank you.
You are in a class at college. The two students sitting next to you keep talking to each other. You can't hear anything your teacher is saying. What would you say to them?
Hello friends, please do not make noise because I need to concentrate in the studies. I am at the college and we need to focus on our lecture notes because the teachers are teaching out the courses. Could you please keep quiet and focus on the studies? Studies is important for you as well, and it's equally important for all the students, and this is my right to be study in the peaceful classes. I really hope that you guys will understand this situation, and I request you to keep quiet and focus on the study so that I can focus better.
So let's just talk a little bit about a telescope. Our eye is the telescope we all are used to. It's a little tiny 5-millimeter telescope, and it serves us very well. But if we make telescopes bigger, we get a couple good things. We have larger telescopes, and they collect a lot more light, so we can see things that are fainter. But it turns out they greatly improve detail, and that's because of the nature that light is a wave, and wave effects, or what we call quantum mechanical effects, mean that when you use a little telescope to look at waves, it becomes blurry through what we call diffraction. And so larger telescopes are extremely useful to improve detail. The other thing that telescopes allow us to do is to put modern digital detectors behind them. Our eye is about the same sensitivity as a photographic plate. A photographic plate can be sat there and it can look at the sky for an hour, so it can see fainter. But modern digital detectors are almost 100 times more efficient than our eyes at collecting light. And so you can improve things by a factor of 100. That's like building a telescope 10 times bigger. And so that improvement has been one of the things that's allowed astronomy to do so much in the optical regime in the last 30 years.
In his book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat and Other Clinical Tales, neurologist Oliver Sacks relates the tale of a medical student who one day woke up and found that his sense of smell was so acute that like a dog he could walk around identifying people, places, and things by his sense of smell. And what a wondrous experience it was. Like a visit to another world, he said. Now, normally we humans don't have a sense of smell as acute as many other animals. We tend to rely more on what we see or hear to tell us about the world. Still, our sense of smell is powerful. Most of us can detect 10,000 different odors, from cigar smoke to a chlorinated swimming pool, from curry to a city sewer. And think about how a particular odor can instantly conjure up past memories. Maybe it's fresh-cut grass that makes you think of childhood summers, or baking bread that reminds you of a special holiday.
Hello, what can I do for you?
We were hoping that you might be able to give us some advice about accommodation for next year.
Where do you live at the moment?
We're in one of the halls of residence.
Oh, is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay, yeah.
But a few problems. It can get a bit noisy some nights, so hard to study.
Yeah, and also, the internet connection just keeps going down. It's a real pain.
Oh, no, that's not good, is it? So, you want to move out?
Possibly rented accommodation?
Well, it's very common. Most students do this in the second year. It's far more private, you get more independence.
But of course, you have to pay for it. It is more expensive, isn't it?
Generally, yes, but there's a range. Also, you may have to pay for services sort of on top of your rent, like gas and electricity, and the television licence.
Yeah, but still probably better on balance. How do we go about that?
Well, here's a list of approved accommodation. You contact the owner direct to arrange a viewing, and any problems, just come back to me.
Right,
Great.
you're very helpful.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, the banana is the first cultivated fruit. It's one of the food items that literally brought people out of the jungle, out of their hunter-gatherer lifestyles, and was there at the dawn of agriculture, which is what helped force human beings into communities. It's really one of the things that helped invent human culture. It's about 7,000 years of history. And the banana, from its center of origin, which is believed to be Papua New Guinea, it spread out with people who traveled in boats across the Pacific into the mainland of Asia and all the way south to Australia, across Indonesia, Micronesia, and eventually they moved as far as Africa and even possibly to Ecuador, all in this time and all on paddled boats and wind-driven boats.
Perhaps you remember the dire predictions from the analysts. The fall-off in housing threatened to drag down the entire economy. High energy prices would put the kibosh on consumer spending. Runaway inflation was poised to take off. David Weiss is an economist at Standard & Poor's. He says in the end, none of those things happened in the final 3 months of last year.
There's an idea that essentially sleep allows a homeostatic readjustment of synapses. During wake, you're bombarded by experiences, and that leads to multiple synapses being engaged and their weights being changed. And then what sleep allows, and specifically actually slow wave sleep, is a pruning back off those unimportant synapses. So it's kind of like, I imagine in some senses, the judicial pruning of your roses to get a nicer flower. So the idea is that the slow wave sleep is able to prune back synapses that are energetically wasteful, but are also wasteful in an information processing account because they're adding noise. And that clearer, crisper signal then translates into improved performance the next day.
What is classical physics? Let's start with the easiest, perhaps. What is physics? Physics is the study of the natural world. It's the study of the physical world, the world we live in. It's experimental science, and it's really the heart, the core of all other experimental sciences. Physics goes beyond just a simple description of nature. It's an attempt to unify a broad variety of phenomena that we observe in the world, both the natural world and the technological world. We're looking for the underlying principles, the explanation, the prediction. We would like to be able to really understand the world around us, measurable things in particular. Physics studies matter and energy, space and time, studies particles and waves, forces and motion. These are a lot of words that we use. We have deep intuitive sense about what those words mean. And part of what we're going to be doing in this course is to start looking carefully at each of these words. What do I mean by energy? What do I mean by force? How would I define that in a laboratory and measure it? And what use is it? How does it help me to understand things about the world?
And we identified 15 priority projects which are supposed to be urgent and immediate needs of adaptation. And these projects, the first one is slightly being implemented, but there is so much bureaucracy behind the funding of that project that it still hasn't been implemented properly. So if these were urgent and immediate needs, then how come it's not being implemented on an urgent and immediate basis? Because the fund is not there. Even if the fund is there, some bureaucratic things are holding it behind. There are some of the funds, they say, like, you have to have certain infrastructures in place and certain things have to be in place for us to fund this additional climate change. But the funds are, what everyone says in these climate change conferences, are not enough. They're just not enough.
When I was 14 years old, a visionary visited my school. The man was a pioneer in new technologies, and he had come to announce how the world I was growing up in was on the verge of radical change. He brandished a VHS cassette and announced that television was going to be transformed forever. Using the power of VHS, everyone would make their own TV programs. Instead of accepting the bland output of comedy and drama from the existing networks, we would simply take control ourselves and become producers as well as consumers. TV stations were going to close, corporations would fold, and a new wave of creativity was about to be unleashed. For me, at that age, it seemed like impeccable logic, and the scenario he described seemed inevitable. Over the following years, it became clear that what he had predicted was certainly not coming true, and I began to think of him as an idiot.
We don't really have a free trade regime. Free trade would mean that you took away all barriers to trade, all impediments to a level playing field. We don't have a level playing field. For instance, the United States and the EU subsidize agriculture. That means that producers in these countries get money for producing. They don't just rely on the market. Free trade would be just rely on the market. Almost half their income comes from government subsidies. Somebody might say they actually spend more money farming Washington than they farming the land. So the problem is that developing countries, too poor to give subsidies, have to compete with this highly subsidized American and European agriculture. So even if they were just as efficient, even if they were twice as efficient, they would have a
over half of patients had what we called the no symptoms, no asthma health belief. They thought about and managed their asthma as an acute episodic illness, the way someone would treat a cold or a flu. They felt when they had their wheezing or shortness of breath, that's when they had their asthma, and it made perfect sense for them to use their quick relief medicines and their chronic controller medicines then. But once they started feeling better, they felt there was no reason for using those medicines because they felt okay.
Consumers, of course, are also keeping an eye on prices, especially at the gas pump. When gasoline topped $3 a gallon last year, many drivers lost their enthusiasm for SUVs and started paying renewed attention to MPG. Another question mark for the industry is whether consumers and policymakers will maintain that focus on fuel efficiency, with gas prices in much of the country now closer to $2 a gallon.
Most of the students had not considered this issue before.
When workers ask for higher wages, companies often raise prices.
Your role will principally involve development of new chemical processes.